Confused about how much tutoring really costs in the UK? Well, prices can range from just £2 per hour all the way up to £200 an hour, and it's not always clear why. In this video, I'll uncover the key factors that affect tutoring fees, from subjects and tutor qualifications, all the way to the difference between in-person and online lessons. By the end of this video, you'll know what a fair price is and how to get the best value for your money. So first, let me outline the key factors that affect the price of tutoring. We'll start by how prices vary by level, and then we'll look at the difference between in-person and online lessons, and then why some specialist subjects cost more, and then finally, how the tutor's qualifications can affect the price. I'll also explain why group tutoring is often the best value for most people. So firstly, it's important to note that prices vary significantly based on the student's education level. For primary or Key Stage 2 tutoring, rates tend to be lower, usually around £15 to £30 per hour for the typical one-to-one online tutor. And as you move to Key Stage 3 or GCSE, the fees will change to roughly £20 to £50 per hour for a typical one-to-one online tutor. And lastly, at A-level, the prices rise further, so typically you're looking at between £30 to £70 per hour for an A-level tutor, especially for subjects like maths or science, which require more specialized knowledge. Now, the key reason why prices rise with levels is due to the complexity of the content. As the subjects get harder and the levels increase, you need more specialist knowledge to teach this. So another way to look at it is that most people can teach primary maths, but less can teach GCSE maths, and even fewer can teach A-level maths. And this is the key reason why GCSE and A-level maths would cost more than primary maths, for example. Now, let's look at the difference between in-person and online tutoring prices. The price I mentioned before were all for online, but for in-person lessons, you can expect a much higher cost. Now, there's two main reasons why the prices are higher. So firstly is the obvious one, which is the travel cost. You can expect to spend anywhere between £5 or an extra £20 per hour, depending on where the tutor is. But secondly, the main reason why in-person lessons cost more is because the tutor themselves cannot do as many in-person lessons in one day as they could online lessons. For example, when I used to tutor in person, I used to travel to individual students' house and do home tutoring. However, I would struggle to fit so many students in a day because sometimes you get stuck in traffic and it could take between 30 minutes to 45 minutes to travel between all of your students. Now, what this would mean is that I could spend in the day 3 to 4 hours over the whole duration of the day just traveling between students. And ultimately, this means that the fees for the in-person lessons will ultimately cost more because in that day, the tutor cannot make as much as they would if they were doing online tutoring. Because all of the time that's spent traveling for the tutor in in-person tutoring, they could actually spend all of those hours doing lessons if they were sitting at home doing online tutoring. Now, of course, this isn't necessarily a reason why in-person tutors should charge more just because they can make more money in a day. However, it is a key reason why online lessons are typically more affordable. This is because the tutor can ultimately fit more lessons in one day and therefore make it cheaper for all students without compromising quality. And in all fairness, this is why a lot of the top tutors or the best tutors in the country don't even do in-person tutoring, they do online only. These top tutors have so many students that want to learn from them, so why would they waste their time traveling 3-4 hours a day in between their lessons when they could just sit at home and do all of the teaching online? So to summarize, for in-person lessons, you should expect to pay between £25 to £50 for Key Stage 2 or primary tuition, £30 to £70 per hour for GCSE, and between £40 to £80 per hour for A-level. Now, an important thing to note is that some subjects, particularly ones that are more specialized like further maths, can command higher prices. Further maths tutors can often charge between £50 to £100 per hour or even more due to the specialist knowledge that's needed to teach the subject. And also it's important to note that there's not many qualified further maths teachers that can actually teach the content properly. Other specialist subjects or exam boards might also cost more due to their complexity, and this is often the case for IB tutors. The IB is quite complex to teach compared to A-level, so therefore the prices and fees will be higher for this, so it's important to consider this when budgeting. Of course, common subjects like GCSE maths or science won't be affected by this. Now, the biggest factor of price is the tutor's qualification level, but more importantly, their track record of student success. So some parents would opt for a tutor who's one level above their child's education level. So for example, they would get a GCSE student to teach their child who's doing primary. Or for example, they'll get an A-level student to teach their child GCSE. And this can be helpful if that student got top grades and is good at communicating. And also it's important to note that these tutors will charge the least because they're the least experienced. On the other hand, if you had a top graduate, like a graduate from Imperial, LSE, Cambridge, Oxford, or even a qualified teacher, then you can expect to pay a lot more. And I'm talking about the best of the best, so graduates who have taught for many years and have great student success, or qualified teachers with many years of teaching experience. Now, the reason why these tutors charge so much is firstly because of their experience, but secondly because they're often overbooked with students, so their prices generally rise. And I don't blame these tutors because if they're actually good at what they do and they actually help their students get the top results, then why could we not expect them to charge more, especially when they're fully booked and loads of students are wanting them? And this is why you can expect the following prices from the top tutors with the best experience. So anywhere between £40 to £50 per hour for Key Stage 2 or primary tuition, £40 to £60 per hour for GCSE, and £50 to £80 per hour for A-level. And it's important to know that these prices are for online one-to-one, as I mentioned earlier that the top tutors often only work online. Now, of course, you'll get loads of tutors who will be charging these prices, but it's always important to check the tutor's credentials along with their reviews to make sure you're getting good value for your money. Now, whilst one-to-one tuition can be very effective, it's often not the most cost-efficient solution for most families, especially if your goal is steady improvement rather than intensive support. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. Let's say we take a top GCSE tutor, as we mentioned earlier, they'll charge anywhere between £40 to £60 per hour. Now, if you think this is extreme, what I want you to do is pause and go ahead and check on one of those Find a Tutor platforms and see what the top tutors are charging. But what you will see is that most of them are charging anywhere between £40 to £60 per hour, and even some of the higher rated ones even more than this. But for now, let's take the lowest value and let's take £40 per hour. Now, to get any substantial results, you'll need regular weekly lessons. This could be anywhere between 1 to 2 hours per week per subject. So let's say, for example, you want GCSE maths tuition, you might need 2 hours per week for this. And let's say you want to go ahead and add science, which is biology, chemistry, and physics, then this will be at least another 3 hours per week. So for maths and science alone, this will be 5 hours per week if you want consistent lessons for steady improvement. And at £40 per hour for 5 hours per week, this would be £200 a week. And yes, there are some people that could afford this, but for most of us, this is extreme and very, very expensive. Now, what tends to happen is that some parents will reduce the hours or get a less experienced tutor in order to make it more affordable, but ultimately this will lead to your child making minimal progress. So what should you do? Well, this brings up group tutoring. Group classes allow multiple students to learn together, which ultimately reduces the cost per person. And what this means is that the top tutors can be accessed for a fraction of the cost. So for example, you can get a tutor who charges anywhere between £60 to £80 per hour for only £15 to £20 per hour in a group class. And this means that expert tuition is accessible to many more families. And it's important to note that if you have a good provider for your tutoring, then you can still have the other benefits like out-of-hours support, so you don't miss out on personalised support. And therefore, for most students, group tutoring offers the best quality of tuition for the price. And here's the thing, if you're looking for expert tuition that actually fits your budget, then I would definitely recommend looking into group classes. So I hope you found this video useful, and I hope it gave you an insight of what costs to expect so you can make sure you're not overpaying. Thanks for watching, and if you found it helpful, make sure to like and subscribe for more tutoring tips and advice.